this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at video actions, and what those are look something like this. Okay, so that's a very simple example, and we've probably all seen those where we're trying to show somebody something that's happening on our screen. So we sort of zoom in and then zoom back out. Now there are other things we would want to do to enhance that using callouts, but that's not in this tutorial. There is a separate tutorial on callouts. For now we're looking at how to get video actions. So that's an example of a simple video action. And then if you wanted to bring a bit more color and personality to them, then here's an example. Now this is just something I did fairly quickly. If I really thought it through, I would put a sort of more detail to the movement. But let me press play and then I'll explain how this sort of animation, the video actions, can be useful. Okay, so immediately you can see that you could have a lot more fun with those. So if, for example, you are doing a tutorial where you want to sort of arrive on the screen in a fun way, you want to bring attention to things that you say at certain times. Like, for example, if you were to say, let me see. So say you wanted to say something and you were to want to really drive the point home. So for example, you could say something like, I do not eat eggs. Now I don't know why I thought about that, because I do eat eggs. So you could really have a lot of fun with bringing the screen to life a bit more than just sitting in the exact same position or distance from the camera, each time. So what we're going to do in this tutorial is look at how to do both of those, how to sort of do a fairly basic video action, and then how to add a sequence of them to your clip on the timeline to just get a bit more action, a bit more life going on. If we just quickly come back here for a second, if we look at these video actions which are sitting on this track over here, to explain what a video action does, sort of by definition, what we're telling Screenflow is that when we create an action, before the little yellow block here, which is the action, it's the command telling that track to do something, what we're saying is where this red scrubber is, our video or image will be in a certain position at this point, and then after that action it'll be in a certain position. And that's all an action really is. It's sort of just telling the clip on the timeline that something needs to happen at this point to end up looking like something after that point. Okay, and then along the timeline I then put in another action to zoom back out. Okay, so what we're going to do now is take a look at how we add these and how we actually just move things around. So to do that, I'm just going to go to the beginning of the timeline, and what we're going to do here is, the idea is we're going to get this image of me to arrive on the screen. So what would happen is, say we would fade into just the desktop, and then just imagine this is a video, not a picture, but what would happen is I would then arrive and be in that position. So in order to do that, we need to select, which we have done, the track that we want to add an action to. So if you come down here in the timeline, you can see that the green screen in lounge track, which is where I was sitting when I recorded that particular snippet, that is sitting on top of the one here called sample recording, which is the desktop in the background. So sample recording is a snippet of video that I did, and this green screen part is just a screenshot of a snippet of video that I did. So that's why this me in the sort of kung fu type position or whatever it is not moving. It's just an image. So we're going to get that to move onto the screen. So to have sort of better better ability to fine tune what we're doing, I'm going to drag this slider here at the bottom of the timeline all the way out, and you can see the seconds up here getting sort of much smaller in how close we can get into our editing here. Now you might not need to go that far, but let's just do it about here. So we have roughly half a second between these. We're going to say that at the 2-second point, we want me to be where I am now. Okay, so we're going to come up here into the sidebar, click on action, which is here in the video section here. Click on action. Oh, sorry, before you click on action, come down and just make sure that you have actually in the timeline highlighted the clip you want to add the action to. So click on that and then come back up here to the action. Okay, now you can see it's appeared over here. Now currently nothing happens when that action starts and finishes because we haven't moved our clip anywhere on the canvas. But what we're saying is at the end of this clip we want to be in this position, but at the end of this action we want the clip to be in that position. Before the action we want it to be in a different position. So let's say we want it to actually be off down here, or let's say we want it to kind of perhaps come across at a bit of an angle. So I'm moving it over here, okay, to kind of like the left, and that's before the action. All right, so, and we know that after the action we want it to be where it was. So if I press play, it moves in just like that. And then so that could be perhaps you sort of saying, hi everybody, in this tutorial blah 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 blah, and then at this point you're now ready to start showing them something. Now as I have said in other tutorials, my personal preference when doing a tutorial like this is not to take up space by having me in the corner. That might happen in some tutorials, but really I prefer just not to, because I want you to be able to see the entire screen and not have to move myself around. So that's my personal preference. But if, you know, depending on the tutorial, it would be a good idea to be on the camera more. But for now anyway, let's say that that is the kind of tutorial that you want to create. So at this point you have arrived on screen, you sort of came up here, and now you've said, and now we're going to be, you know, I'm going to show you something. So we now want to get you down here to the corner. So what we would do is come up again to action, click on action. It's added another one, and now what we're saying is after this action we want to have you down here. So we need to shrink. So come up to, you see these dots, you can drag and move things around based on those. So come up to the top corner and click on it, and then keep holding it and bring it down. Say to, if you're happy with that sort of size, move it. Maybe you want it about there. Can you see what I mean? For me, I just don't really want myself down in the lower corner. I just find that it can be a bit distracting sometimes, having someone, you know, moving around down there. It depends. Anyway, so we want to be in that position after the action. So if we come back here and press play, okay, and so if you come back here, okay, and that's kind of that's how you could deal with perhaps, you know, the green screen element of any recordings you're dealing with. And again, green screen is handled in a different tutorial, but for now that's how you could deal with that part of the timeline. And then the principle is the same. Say you want to show somebody a certain part of your screen. So if I want to come up here and show you, this area, that means I'm going to want to zoom into it. Now, as you're watching this, I've already zoomed into it to show you that area. So I will then zoom back out at this point, and as I say this is like me giving myself instructions for when I do the editing after the recording. But what will happen is at this point, and then I magically click my fingers, we'll start zooming out, okay, back to normal, and then we will zoom back in. And now just to show you how to do that again, which is going to be very similar, if not the same, as what we've just done. So it's just another example really. We will come to we've clicked on this clip in the timeline, come up to action. And now I'm just going to click and move it aside here so that when we do play afterwards, we're not going to be distracted by me moving. So we're going to play from this point afterwards. So what we're saying is after this yellow block, we want to zoom in the top right hand side. So come up here underneath action, you can see where it says scale, it's at 100%. Now you can either overtype that or you can slide it like that. Now as we do this, it's zooming in, keeping the center of our canvas showing, around here. What we want to be able to do is actually zoom up to that top right corner. So if I just bring that back down like this, what we can do is come over here and say 150%. All right, hit enter and then drag it by clicking and holding, and then actually drag it to that position that we want. So now if we come back in the timeline and hit play, okay, and then that's how you zoom in. And then now let's say we've done that and we want to then move over to the left hand side of the screen to show something else. Well, then we just add another action, and then what we're saying is after this yellow block we want the screen to be in a different position again. So we just click on the screen and move it over here, and let's say maybe we want to zoom in a little bit more again. So we want to maybe go to 200%, hit enter. Now it's zoomed in, so we need to there. Okay, so let's go back to our first one. So we hit play, we zoom in, and then we go across. Let's do that again. Zoom in, go across. Okay, so those are a couple of simpler video actions, and then just to give you an example of how you can make the more movement as we did before, let's zoom in on what we did. So we already know how to add them. I'm just going to zoom in, move across. Hold on, let me zoom out and find where we are here. Okay, we want to be on that part of the timeline, so we're going to zoom in here. Okay, so if we just look at this, we can see that we've got that. I'm just going to hold the scrubber and slowly drag and move it across so we can see what's happening with these ones. Okay, so we see at that point, as we hit our first video action, it's bringing me in. Now if I wanted to take longer bringing myself in or quicker, I could click on the purple block and it turns yellow, and I can drag it in or out to make it take longer. And if it had to take that much longer, then I would have to move these other ones along the timeline so that we don't mess up everything. And that can simply be done by clicking on them, holding command, and clicking on them one at a time, and then selecting all of them, and then click and move them along the timeline there. Okay, But let's say we want to adjust this one, so we want it to take longer coming in. Just drag it out, come back here, hit play. You see it takes longer, and then it gets to the other video actions over here. And then just to see what those video actions are doing, rather than go and create a whole bunch of them now, you now know how to add a video action. So the idea is how to add a bit more movement rather than just zooming in and zooming out. So here, at this point, I'm ducking down, ducking up, but take a look here, it's angled now. It's actually moving at an angle, at another angle, and then a few quick little movements, and then going back down at an angle. So just to show you one with an angle, let's come back to this timeline. Sorry, not this timeline, this clip. I'm going to add an action. Zoom in. Now let's move it away from that last action a little bit. So what we're going to say is, after this action, we want our screen to be straight, but before this action, okay, we want our screen to be at a different angle and perhaps smaller. So here we've got this little X with a circle and this small dot. If you click on it and hold it, you can actually just rotate it, move it around, okay? So let's say there, and then I'm going to click just on the actual over here, just click and move it down. Let's say move it there, and then click up at the top, and then that's shrinking it, and then we're going to get it off the screen there. So what that means is right now this is its beginning position. At the end of the yellow block, it's going to be in the position we want it to be in. So that's how we add sort of a bit more of a dynamic thing to it, by moving things, changing their size, changing the angles. There you go. Okay. And then just to show you lastly in this particular tutorial, up here we've also got position, X, Y, and Z rotations, and opacity. And that obviously means that we can make our clips we can make them as transparent as we like. Okay, which you can actually do as part of the action as well. So say we want the clip to end up being transparent. So what we could do here at this stage after this action is we would turn down the opacity to say almost there, just for the example, and then before you can see that if we do it sort of, we had that one and it disappeared, and over here you can see as it comes on, you can see the opacity going. Okay, so you can add opacity, and then these positions here, we've already seen that you can scale it. So let's just put that opacity back fully. You've seen that you can actually, this is one way, just dragging this is one way you can zoom in and zoom out, and then of course you can change the position like that. So we've seen that part already. The position here is sort of, these numbers sort of say where on the screen it is. If you need to have things in a specific part of the screen, then you would make a note of these numbers if you need to put things back in those places at certain times, and that's what those position numbers can be for. And then here, rotations, these can be quite fun if you're dealing with sort of slides and bringing in certain diagrams, for example. So if I just get our screen back to its normal position. So the way these rotations work is, if you come to say X rotation, you can either use you can type in a number of degrees here, or you can use this little dial. Okay, so this can be quite interesting for just again bringing in a bit more life to the different assets you might be using on your timeline. Okay, so 0 degrees is as it was. Okay, and then you've got your Y rotation. So that can be good if you are dealing with things like book covers or things that you're going to have in the background. And then you've got your Z rotation, which moves things that way, which is the same as when you actually hold that little dot over here. Okay, so you can use a combination of the X, Y, and Z rotations to get a lot of fun dynamic stuff happening on screen in conjunction with scaling. So when we looked at the whole idea of sort of sneaking up onto the screen and then sort of moving back and forwards and left and right, and that would be using however many of these that you want to use. So that is video actions for you, and really you're kind of limited probably just by your imagination in that you can either keep it absolutely simple, which is, you know, zoom in, zoom out, or you can just have a bit more fun, bringing a bit more life to the things as you move them in and around the screen. So that's it for this tutorial. I'll see you in the next one.